Hi everybody, my name is Janet Allen and I'm here to give the community perspective. I am the president of Heritage Crossing Resident Association. And as Claude said, that Heritage Crossing is a townhome community. I moved into Heritage Crossing in November of 2002, but it was credited as completed in 2003. When it was completed, one of our councilwoman there said, "Don't let nobody run you out of your home." I didn't know what she was talking about, but I kept living and I found out. We have 185 privately owned homes and 75 public housing units. We are located directly across the street from the highway to nowhere. And I was wondering, does anybody remember how that name stuck to that particular place, the highway to nowhere? I don't remember when I started calling it the highway to nowhere. I don't know whether or not it was after my Heritage Crossing experience or because I'm a native Baltimorean, I've always known it as the highway to nowhere. Anyway, with Heritage Crossing, I'm really proud to be a part of that community. We were created for the successful attraction of middle and working class residents and to aspire the aspirations of lower class, or not lower class, but lower income neighbors and spur healthy and equitable development in this Central West Baltimore. How many people around here have heard of Michael Buffer? Michael Buffer? Okay. Well, Michael Buffer is the former model. He turned into an announcer, and I said that his claim of fame came from 5 short words that he should have been proclaiming as I signed my closing documents at Heritage Crossing. And these words were, "Let's get ready to rumble!" Because really, and I didn't know it at that time, but I was in for a rumble against poverty, against disinvestment, against broken promises and dashed dreams, against the way in which this town considers race when developing the particular areas in particular neighborhoods. And I did not know that Klaus felt that way because he was, him and I met and we were talking. He says, "Okay, well, you have all this land and you don't need all that land. It's an urban area." And I'm like, "Well, we like our land." And this was, we have a beautiful park and we have like a brune off of Martin Luther King and Franklin, which is a traffic calming thing, and it's basically, he tells me, that it's used mostly in the county and not in urban areas. And we are centrally located. We're located on the corner of Martin Luther King and Franklin Street, and so we do have a beautiful suburban look in an urban environment. And the group of young, mostly minority professionals that initially moved into the community was enthused about living at Heritage Crossing. They knew that it was going to be a challenge, but it was sort of like we were a part of a new frontier. We were ready to build Baltimore because we love Baltimore, right? But when I told everybody where I lived at, the guy said, "Oh yeah, you live right across the street from where the guy is on the medium strip with the television and the chair." Because really, it was the guy on the medium strip and he had a little TV, it wasn't plugged up, and he had a little chair there and he would sit down and look at the TV because it wasn't working. And that was the beginning of the homeless encampment. So our community is a beautiful community, but we had giants in the land. You know, like the children of Israel was like, oh yeah, that's the land of milk and honey, but they had giants in the land, right? And so we had giants in the form of neglectful developers, urban blight, high drug trafficking, murder, brokenness, disinvestment that was so blatant that you could see it from those homeless encampments. Because first we had one person in the medium strip, then all of a sudden we had like 100 people on the other side. How many people remember that? With their tents on the other side of Martin Luther King Boulevard and the side of Martin Luther King and Franklin, with their tents and everything. And we met with our politicians. Hey, that's not right. We are trying to build community. We can't build community like that. And so they had us to meet with the homeless unit. We went out there and talked with people. The homeless unit spoke with them, asked them if they wanted to leave. Of course they didn't. But they eventually had to leave. So we're like, yes, let us get back to building a community. By that time, we were told that the State Center project and the Redline was getting ready to be built. So no doubt about it, we got your community. We're getting ready to build in your community. Well, we were happy about that. 6 months later, the homeless encampment appeared again. And so we had to make a long story short, we had to meet with politicians, write letters, write the Sun, be interviewed, and to try to get the homeless encampment removed from our community. They put a fence around it. They moved them, put a fence around it, and then they encamped around the fence. And so we had to do the same thing again, and then they put another fence around it. The police had something called the Homeless Outreach Task Force, and what they did was that they found places for the homeless people to live. But it was a horrific experience that we had to live repeatedly for years. Unless you guys think I'm just some cold-hearted woman, just imagine you sending your daughter to the only store in your area, the Rite Aids, to get a prescription, or if you had to walk past people shooting, firing up, just to go to the store. How would you feel? Would you want that in your backyard? And it was no, we did not. And so the overpass the overpass of the Highway to Nowhere housed the homeless encampment. And we were certainly happy because it was a scary and unpleasant and anxiety-filled task just to drive by it and walk by it. It was the stench of human feces. It was the sight of huge rats running out of templates because everybody was, okay, this is where they are, and they're giving them these big tubs of food, and they're like, okay, and they're throwing that down to the side, and so it's all these templates, and the rats are just running in and out of in there. It's huge, and it's like, wow. It's sort of like that song, I'm about to lose my mind up in here. That's how I felt, because it was just a fear that our life's biggest investment, which was and is our home, was going to be the next generation of vacant to value. So what we did was that we were meeting with 8 other communities wanting to get development in our area, so that we met with like Bolton Hill, Seton Hill, Upton, and we were meeting for the State Center project. Also, some people wanted to meet and talk about the Redline. We had the super block going on. But to make a long story short, the State Center, the super block, and the Redline were all canceled. So, as I stated before, we had giants in the land, but nonetheless, we had a group of people that believe and still believe that we can defeat those giants that are in our land. The next challenger we had was the uprising of 2015. The uprising affected us because it was a whole lot of young people breaking into our homes, and then when we were calling the police, they would not be responsive, or they would respond 2 hours later. And so the uprising, along with the cancellation of the State Center project, exasperated a lot of the residents that we had that were once excited about being on the ground floor of what they believed to be a Renaissance area. And they believed that the systemic disparities in Baltimore's African American communities resulted in blight, drug corners, crime, failing school systems, plummeting home values, and that led to more attrition in our community, that people that were going to stay there just packed up and left and moved into the counties. So for those of us that stayed, the question was, how do you build strong neighborhoods in a city that's beset by racial consideration and prejudice? And to answer this question, I think one of the few people that I could say they felt me was Mr. Antero there, because when I read his book and I went to Morgan State University to hear your lecture, you gave me hope, and you made me understand more about what I was going through, because I really didn't understand it at all. You know, I was born in the 60s, so I thought, you know, a lot of stuff was over with and that, you know, kumbaya, but that really wasn't the truth, and I never really considered that because I was in the African American community, that they would not put the amenities in that community to make that community grow. That I believe that if in any other community in Baltimore City, that if a bunch of young professionals that were doctors and lawyers and social workers had moved into those communities, they would have had an adequate school system, they would have had libraries, they would have had a place they could sit down and eat. We don't even have that now in supermarkets. And so we're like, you know, this was something new to me that was happening, and so what we did was that we listened to, and you know, experts just like Mr. Antero. We went to different conferences. They talked about divestment, gentrification, and community development. And one of the biggest takeaways that I had I went to a vacant to value conference in 2015, and the man was talking about how he built the community around Johns Hopkins, these new houses over there. And he said, well, where do you get your more bang for your buck at? And he said that, of course, it's the corners. So you build the corners up first. And so then that was like a eureka moment for us. And so I went back and I was talking to our board, and I said, we need to do something with the entrance of our community. And so currently, this is the entrance of our community. And of course, both of these areas, these are the entrances. This is how you can, when you walk out our community, this is the highway to nowhere. What we did was that I was able to register, and I applied to be a part of the Greater Baltimore leadership class, and I was talking with them about what was going on in our community, and that was during the time we still had a homeless encampment as well. And I was talking with some people from my leadership class about about our idea for a new entrance. Because to me, Martin Luther King is sort of like that gateway to Baltimore City. Most people leaving and coming from Baltimore, they have to come through Martin Luther King Boulevard. And so it is a very important gateway, and we felt that we wanted people to see that we are here and that this is a nice, beautiful community on Martin Luther King Boulevard. If you look at it from here, you could never tell the beauty that's inside of the community. And so one of my classmates from the Greater Baltimore Leadership Program, he designed this particular picture. He designed this. This is his architectural rendering. And okay, just because they design it don't mean it's going to happen. So we then sought funding for it, and we went to and testified in Annapolis for about 2 or 3 years asking for money. And no, we didn't get any from Annapolis. But this recent Community Catalyst grant, we were awarded some monies in order to redo this. And so in a few, well, right now we are working on redeveloping this particular area so that maybe within a year from now when you walk by, you'll see this beautiful site here. As far as the highway to nowhere is concerned, what we did was that we talked to everybody about what's going on with us. ULI, the Baltimore Development Corporation and Caves Valley, we had separate meetings with each of those gentlemen in which we shared our vision of what we wanted to see and what we wanted to be created at the highway to nowhere. And because our community has a lot of blight on it, and because like right now, the 800 block of Harlem Avenue and Emerson Avenue is blighted. That's right adjacent to our community, and we're getting ready to have that developed. And the other parts of the community that were blighted, a lot of that area got raised. So we don't really want a whole lot of vacant lots. We need economic development. We still need those supermarkets. We still need restaurants. We still need to be able to have a life that includes excellent schools, which is going to be, you all know that it's going to be a Catholic school built on Martin Luther King Boulevard. We want economic development in the form of businesses. And we wouldn't mind a space where people can ride their bicycles and stuff like that and enjoy the park. But we have a beautiful park at Heritage Crossing. But most of all, what we need is economic development so that people can be working, and so that when I don't have to travel a mile or two to go to a supermarket, or I don't have to go all the way downtown in order to sit down at a restaurant to eat. That is one of my dreams, to be able to walk to a restaurant and be able to eat. Seems like a simple dream and a dream that some people take for granted, but it's not a dream that we can take for granted in our community, because that's not what we have. And so at the end of the day, what I want is what anybody else wants, that wants to have a decent way of life, that doesn't want the quality of their life, wants to have a nice quality of life, and doesn't want the quantity of life to be cut short because they live in a certain zip code. And so our dream is that one day a zip code will just be a mailing destination and not a prediction of your life's expectations or outcomes. Thank you.